everybody, Mike, Bonnie, Tim, and Faith are here coming at you live. Tim is in Northern California, Bonnie, Austin, Texas. Faith, where are you coming at us from?
Atlanta, Georgia.
That's what I'm talking about. Oh my goodness, and yours truly coming from Columbus, Ohio. We really do represent the 50 states and that geographical territory, right? Can you think of anything we're missing? No. Michigan, not missing at all. No need for them. And Maine. What's going on in Maine right now? Does anyone know? Nope. That's exactly right. So I'm okay with 49 states. That's fine. Bonnie and Tim, updates on what's happening these days. Are you still quarantining? Are you still, as summer has hit, what's the status with like social visits?
We opened in Texas, like for one of the first to open real fast and furious. That's the Texas way.
Yep.
And then whoops, everything has tripled. And so now they're wanting to shut it all back down again. They're like, don't go anywhere. Don't leave your house. Don't do anything.
Dang.
So we're just
That's California too.
Oh, there you go.
We did a good job. Everything was kind of slowing down, and then they opened up, and everything went.
Yeah.
So now we are. We weren't doing anything anyway, so it didn't change that much for us. But
You mean the virus just didn't go away?
it didn't apparently. No.
But I was assured the virus
The sun.
would disappear.
It didn't.
Yeah. Nope. It's here.
Nice.
It's climbing. It's cruising.
Oh my goodness. Faith, what about you? What have you been doing in the midst of all this pandemic stuff?
So I spent a lot of time at home, most of the whole time working at home. And then things kind of started, I didn't go right out when things started to open up in Georgia, but our offices just opened back up where we office out of. So we've been in the office a little bit, but I still haven't done a whole lot. I really will only go around people I know, people who I'm like can ask and look at and say, listen, have you been sick? Yeah. Or not? You know what I'm saying? Because I don't want to be around you. I don't want to be around you if you have been, to be honest. And wearing my mask, which is, controversial, but I've been wearing it.
Is it controversial in Atlanta?
People don't wear them.
Yeah.
Like it's you have like a few people that do, and then for the most part people don't. The only time I feel comfortable is if I'm in like a enclosed space with people that I'm aware of have been actually taking similar precautions as I have, without wearing it. But for the most part, you can go to the grocery store and people don't wear them at all, and that baffles me.
Yeah,
that's how it is here too. And they have the signs out front now since it got re-locked down to do like you're required. There's a big sign. You're required to wear a mask and to adhere to the 6 feet thing. And then you go in and there's a bunch of people without masks on. It's like, well, just kind of want to start pointing.
Well, I don't think you guys realize that Bill Gates is taking over the world in the midst of this, and wearing a mask is a capitulation to the one world system promised in Revelation.
You've been on Twitter and conspiracy theory hashtag too much.
It's safe to say that has been said, and that's all I'm going to say.
No,
I
totally,
know. You know
totally.
what? We've all heard it. I was like, huh. And then like a few hours later, Sai's like, what are you reading? I'm like, blah, 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 blah. He's like, okay. If it's that quick off the top, you're too far deep. We need to scale it back.
Well, Bonnie, why don't you introduce Faith to everybody, and then let's get started. We're so looking forward to having you on, Faith, and having a great conversation. Take it away, Bonnie.
Yes, awesome. This is my friend Faith, and she's joining us, Faitth Brooks. And I met Faith about, that was a while ago, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I think it was. Because I was part of the Legacy Collective, which is a nonprofit organization with Brandon and Jen Hatmaker, and Faith worked for them. And so we met up at an event one time and became friends. And I wanted to bring her on today because she now works for Be the Bridge. So Faith, we're dying to hear all about Be the Bridge. But first, kind of just tell us about you. What do you do for Be the Bridge and how you kind of got into the work?
Yeah, so I work for Be the Bridge as director of programs, and I got into the work of, I've always been very like justice centered and focused since I was a kid. That's just been something that's a part of just who I am. And if you know anything about the Enneagram, I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, which justice
Boom.
is like really a
Boom.
core. Yeah, like it's really a big part of people who, identify as an 8. So anyways, I have always had that lean towards justice, but it really was in, like, I would say college that I started to really talk more about it and be able to like express my feelings and my experiences of being a Black woman in America and what that looked like, because I went to a very small conservative private school and I dealt with a lot of microaggressions, a lot of just different racism that you would experience. And it was in this like insular faith-based environment. So that kind of started the beginning of some real unravelings for me and being able to talk about it. And then in 2015, I moved to Austin, and I got introduced to LaTasha Morrison a few months later. And she was not, Be the Bridge hadn't really started yet as an organization, but the conversation and the guide that she wrote had just been released at a big conference. And I met her and I was like, look, I'm in Austin and I maybe only see a Black person where I was living at the time, maybe like once a week. And that was really weird for me coming from Houston.
Wow.
And so she just kind of was like, I know how you feel, don't worry, and just befriended me. And we became friends. And then she threw me into leading a Be the Bridge group. And I was the youngest person. So it was like myself and Jen Hatmaker and Laura and Monica and a bunch of people that we knew. And I was the leader. I was probably like 24 or something at the time. And so I was leading all these women and talking about how we can have conversations about racial healing and reconciliation. And so that's how I got started and stayed close with Tasha and just kind of volunteered and helped her build Be the Bridge until I got hired last August full time. So
that's awesome. Congratulations. It's a perfect role for you. You're so personable, but you're also so passionate. So it's like, it's a great combo for you. But for those that don't know, I should have done this from the get-go. Can you explain what Be the Bridge is and why it might be unique as to some other sort of anti-racism education organizations?
Yeah, so Be the Bridge, really our mission is to empower people and culture towards racial healing, equity, and reconciliation. And so we do that work in church spaces, and we have guides to help guide people through that. But we also do it in spaces outside of church. And so I think our organization is unique in that way, in that we have a way of talking about race and racism that disarms people, gets people in the room to have a conversation.
Yeah.
And then we love to send them to our partner friends and organizations that are going to really up the ante a little bit and get them ready for some heavy hitting conversations that might be harder to hear at first. But we really kind of get people started at their 101, 201 level of learning when it comes to race and what does it look like to be anti-racist? What does it look for your church to be that way, or your organization or your school? So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do, and we're all over. And so all over the world, and people download our guides from our shop, start Be the Bridge groups, have conversations with their friends and their community, and really just walk through what does it look like for us to what does reconciliation look like, right? It's not just holding hands and singing Kumbaya. It requires actual action and actual repentance. And I think that people forget the repentance piece and actually turning away from your old behaviors and walking in a new way of behaving. Yeah. And so we really get to have a lot of fun fostering conversations like that with people. And that's just a little bit about what we do, but we do a whole lot more.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Because I feel like when I first heard about Be the Bridge, it was about 7 or so years ago, I think, is when LaTasha first started.
Yeah, 6.
Yeah, something around there. And I was really intrigued by it because of just exactly what you said, how disarming you guys make the conversation. And one of the, I think I had like this small stint where I used to have this podcast, and it was like 4 episodes, and I interviewed LaTasha on it. And it was the first time I had ever heard the phrase structural privilege. I had never, ever heard it. And so can you explain that a little bit? And for our listeners that really are 101 and don't understand maybe structural privilege, white privilege, like the difference there. And also, when we talk about systemic racism, I think that sometimes in the conversation, people are really caught up on just individual, just saying, well, I'm not a racist, so therefore it's fine. But how we need to take a step bigger or a step more than that, but also that it's there's so much baked in.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of layers when you start talking about privilege with people that kind of like throws people off a little bit when you say privilege, because sometimes they're like, well, my family didn't have a lot of money, or I never had a bunch of, my family's not rich, or I worked really hard for everything that I have. I'm not privileged, because the idea behind it is that you work for what you get and you get it on your own accord. And so therefore nobody helped you, which means you're not privileged. But the big but is that there is a such thing as white privilege, because we have a systemic racism. And systemic racism means that you have your education system, your healthcare system, really our political system, all kinds of things that you can think of, any kind of structure that we have right now in America. These structures have benefited white people over Black people and other people of color. And the reasoning for that is that because after enslavement and then moving into Reconstruction, we really had to start addressing some of the issues, but people were just not trying to let Black people have equal rights. And so they kind of basically, like, once, a lot of Black people they'd won offices and they were, in Senate and they were doing great. But then white people were like, we want those seats back, and we want to put more like provisions in place to prevent you from making progress. And so that's what happens. Like, the small progress gained after Reconstruction was lost. And so then we move into even further distancing and issues with Jim Crow laws, and how, you were dealing with segregation. And a lot of people hear about Jim Crow, so you might be a little bit more familiar with that. But the point is that there's laws that were put in place so that way Black people would not be able to, whether it's get jobs, have housing loans, live in certain areas, redlining, which that's where that comes from. And so that meant that generations of families didn't gain wealth. You didn't get wealth from owning property, or your property was stolen because your family was racially terrorized. And so there's a level of white privilege because there was a system that was set up to benefit white people over Black people. And so that's why people say white privilege, because it's just saying that, hey, we have a system that was set up to benefit you over other people. Now, you might not have known it, but that's just what exists.
Right. That's just what it is. And I think that's what's so scary about the whole thing is how much we have to look inside and say, how much have I been benefiting from a system that I literally didn't know?
Yeah. Can I jump in for a second, Bonnie?
Yes, please do.
Well, no, just as a illustration of that, we moved to a suburb of Columbus that we found out as recently as the 50s had provisions in their housing contracts to not, there was a central housing authority that would buy up if you wanted to sell your home here, so that people of color and Jewish people could not buy homes in our city. I mean, that was in the real estate contracts as recently as 50 years ago, which I would never have known that. But that is utterly systemic, right? That's not, I did not know that when we bought here, but that has still benefited me just in virtue of my skin color and punished others. Yes. So, I mean, I was, all of those conversations were far away for me until here's this really tangible example of exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, that's like really a perfect example. I think that people don't realize that there were actually neighborhoods where it's like, these people cannot live here. Or if you see Black families moving in, then it's like, we're going to leave, which is something that people kind of coined the term like white flight, right? So they're going to move on to like a different neighborhood or leave out of that neighborhood because now there's too many Black people. And they were told that if you have too many Black people move into your neighborhood, that's going to make your property value go down. Right. And so that's what led to like white flight, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. I was just shocked.
Yeah. So I think, like you said, people don't know. And along with what you were talking about earlier, we're talking about experiencing microaggressions. There's so many of these things that are so buried. Do you know what I mean? That like we have come We're part of the system. We don't know it. We've also come accustomed to seeing. So when you talk about, and especially like I'm at fault, especially as white people, or I say something. So when you were discussing microaggressions, what are some of the ways sort of that we are part of the problem and might not necessarily know it, whether it be our language or I don't even know, the neighborhoods we live in, or, you know, what is it that we can do on these little levels that we do all the time that are obvious, they're obvious to you and they're obvious to the Black community, but they're not so obvious to us, but we want to know and learn?
I think like some common microaggressions are, I used to get these a lot, like you talk like a white person, which for me was like, hey, look, like my mom was like very, very a stickler. She's a stickler about our language. And so for her, if we were not allowed to talk slang, so she taught us to enunciate our words. That was just how I was raised. I can't change that. And that's the way that I talk. But it really started to bother me because people would say it as if the fact that I'm a Black woman and I talk this way equates to me trying to be white, meaning that can I not be intelligent and brilliant and talk the way that I talk and just be a great Black woman? Like, why does that have to be equated with whiteness, right? Yeah. And so I think there's like a social conditioning that happens that people might not even realize as kids that equates white with being better because, hey, you talk, why would you compare me the way that I talk to a white person as if that's good or that's better, or like it's not good to talk like a Black person, whatever that's supposed to mean. Right. So that's definitely a microaggression I got all the time, or saying things to people very similar to that, but like, you're like an Oreo, Black on the outside, white on the inside. Wow. That got said to me a lot. Growing up too. Other things like people wanting to understand your hair, or the fact that you, like right now, I have braids in my hair. I've been told when people have seen my hair in different hairstyles, your hair looks like a science experiment. And it's things like that where it's like, I'm curious to know about you or your hair or what you look like, but I don't necessarily know how or what to say sometimes. And so people just end up saying things that's just not helpful, or finding ways that you're kind of like expressing something to a Black person, but it's almost like a negative jab. And I think unless you're able to really kind of look a little bit deeper, or just think a little bit more before saying something, it can kind of be it can be beneficial in the long run, because what happens and what has happened is most Black people have taken microaggressions, have experienced these things, and we talk to each other about them amongst ourselves, but we don't always point it out to the person directly, because we would be doing it all the freaking time. We would be doing it all the time, saying, hey, you know, you just did a microaggression, like, and I would appreciate it if you don't. But at the same time, when you do start to speak up for yourself, sometimes in work environments or just depending where you're at, people do get offended. And then you have to, like, you know, ask yourself, do I want to deal with HR? Do I want to have to deal with my job? Is somebody going to, you know, use me correcting them against me, or say that I was being problematic or trying to start trouble? So there's like so many layers of thought you have to go into. I know for me, when I was in an office environment and I was like one of the only Black people, I would time when I changed my hair, because I didn't want to like have to deal with people asking me questions in the middle of the week. So I would change it over the weekend. And then when I come Monday, something is different. But if I came during the middle of the week, you have to deal with comments and questions and, you know, oh, your hair was just like this yesterday. Why is it like this today? Or how did you do that? And sometimes I just didn't feel like doing that. I just wanted to be able to show up as me. And so I also encourage people to watch videos about microaggressions, because that really helps, especially asking people where they're from. Like that's especially Asian Americans or people of different ethnicities saying, hey, where are you from? And they say, you know, Ohio. And they say, no, where are you really from? And then, you know, so like things like that.
No, really, Ohio. Yeah.
Yeah. So things like that. I encourage people to look up more about microaggressions, because you'll learn that unconsciously you probably do it. And once you see several examples, it'll help you to like ask yourself a question before you say something.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And can you talk about your experience in maybe it's in a sense of microaggression, but it might also just be in a sense of sort of being like a lack of representation when it comes to the church and on the church stage. And I think I've been trying to make sure to, as hard as it is, and I just openly admit it's super tough to continue to stay friends with people on Facebook or have them in my feed that I disagree with. But if I don't, I'm sort of in this like carefully curated bubble that they think all the same things I think. So it's fine. But when I look outside that, I learn a lot. And I think something I do hear oftentimes from people who are still kind of deep in the evangelical church is that this doesn't happen in church. And that like a Black person could walk into a major evangelical church and feel represented and feel fine. And I can't imagine that that is true. And I don't want to speak for anybody. So I wanted to know what your opinion is on that, or what your experience has been.
I don't think that in the broad evangelical church as we know it, there's a ton of representation. I will say that there's a lot of having to assimilate in order to be accepted of sorts, if you were to, say it that way. It's very different than like the Black church, right? Where, there's just more of a, like your structure and the community, and like there's traditions with the Black church.
Right.
But there's some people who, some Black people, and I've gone to a lot of different kind of churches, but there's some Black people who want to go to a multicultural or multi-ethnic church, which I've grown up in. However, the one thing that I've noticed is that there isn't a lot of representation a lot of times, in the sense that you might see a Black person on stage singing, or a Black person involved like with the instruments, the musical aspects of the service. But when it comes to like the people actually making decisions for the church, like your executive staff, your leadership, usually it's mostly all white. And there isn't really a Black person in a position where they're actually making like important key decisions.
Right.
And musically, if you wanted a little bit more flavor and you didn't want to just be subjected to like, Bethel or Hillsong or the Elevation, there's not as much like diversity in music. And so like even the churches that I've helped with over the years and helped to plant, one of the things that I said was, hey, listen, a part of this and reaching other people, we're in a lower income neighborhood. It's mostly Black people and other people of color. You have to have music that connects with the community.
Right.
But that was just even like such a hard thing to push, like to get just the music to be inclusive.
Right,
and so what I've seen even in churches as a Black person, when you're trying to say like, these are some ways to connect, these are some ways to be more inclusive, even that's met with resistance. So I would say that I didn't grow up seeing a whole lot of Black people in prominent evangelical spaces that were actually in positions of true leadership and actually leading in that way, specifically even women. So like you would see some Black men and you would know the few that were there and that were called upon. But when it comes to Black women, I especially didn't see it. Yeah. And so I always wanted to see myself in places, and I didn't always. And the minute that I did, I was excited, but it's not very common. Yeah. And I think that people view the fact that, hey, we do have some, Black people on our staff, or Black people who sing for us, or around the stage somewhere, as a fact that, yes, see, we have that, we have those elements. But the truth is who's making the decisions? Are Black people in positions to make actual decisions that are going to affect the body and believers? And then, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No. And I think it doesn't help too that most like pictures we have of God is like this white Jesus, which is like, it's super hard because it is literally talking about like making God in our image, right? In terms of people in power, and then representing God to sort of also look the same. So we have like this influx of people right now that are having part of this conversation. And I knew about Be the Bridge before it was a cool thing that people talked about. And I saw a post that you said today that really hit me. I think it was today, maybe it was yesterday. All the days are kind of the same day. But it was like, yes, we're still talking about racism. And so, like, over the past few weeks, there's been this big influx of conversation when we're talking about Breonna Taylor and we're talking about George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery. And then I'm sure a ton of people following Black voices, people reading books. And then it's sort of all of a sudden, my feed is back to normal. Like, people aren't elevating voices anymore, except for new people I've followed. And so I think this is a two-part question. What is it that you want to say in that space? We had Britt Barron. Do you know who Britt Barron is? Mm-hmm. We had her on the podcast a few weeks ago, and I said the same thing to her, which was like, I fear that it will be something where people are like, yes, let's talk about racism, let's help, and then it just slowly sort of dissipates. And so what is it, what can people do? What is a first step beyond reading? Education is huge. But I also saw in like the Be the Bridge group on Facebook that I'm in, of someone saying like, oh, I'm worried because people are forming groups and doing these things without doing internal work first. It's my experience that when we do the internal work, it becomes personal. So then we can continue the outside work. But what do you say? What are your guidelines there? What's your encouragement there? What would you tell a group of people that want to do more than just learning, but sort of put it into practice so it's not something that dissipates?
Yeah. So what I would say to people who want to learn more is, first, I'm glad that people are choosing to hang in there and continue the conversation. It's easy to cop out, and especially when it doesn't necessarily affect you, or if most of your world, you don't really intersect with other people of color. So it's easier to kind of like, go back to normal, right? But for those who are choosing to ask themselves what they can do next, I think one of the main things, like you were saying, was internal work is so important. So yes, of course, you can read and educate yourself, which is great. But right now we're in, an election season, and people have a variety of political beliefs, which is totally fine. But you can be a part of, helping people as they vote. Like, there's a lot of people who are like setting up snack stations and water stations, or volunteering at their local polling centers and really wanting to be a part of this, or finding themselves starting conversations with family or friends, or doing book clubs so that way they can foster conversation amongst other friends of theirs who might not necessarily be super open, but they have like a small door into starting these conversations with people. I think relationship is so important. And also talking to your children about, hey, this is like really what you're learning, right? And how to start approaching these conversations with them. And so I think whenever we're able to start like these small, like actionable steps of like changing your life and putting yourself in a position to where, like, have you ever put yourself in a position where you are like one of the only white people amongst all Black people or other people of color? Have you ever changed your scenery? Have you ever seen what that's like or felt like? Have you ever attended a church that was different from yours? Things like that. I mean, those are experiences that I've even put myself in just so I have a different perspective. And it really is it's something that positively affects you. You have more compassion for people. You have more of an understanding, at least on the baseline level, of where other people are coming from when you put yourself in the position to be a learner and also to just listen. I think the one thing I would say and caution people is this is a time to listen and to learn. It's not a time to start a movement and to try to lead in this. There's so many people leading, so many Black voices and people who've been doing this work that are available for people to follow and to learn from. And the thing that you can do the most that impacts people, and I say this all the time, it's change yourself, change your life. That impacts the next generation and the generation after that and your family. When you choose to make a difference and to change your perspective, your kids will think differently, and so will their kids. And that is huge, and we can never underestimate the importance of doing that.
Yeah, just the idea of repentance that you said earlier, I think that for me that really resonates, because I think a lot of people still think of repentance as just confession. But this idea of kind of reposturing, if, I live in a very white area and I've grown up in a very white church, this idea of reposturing yourself turns you into a room or at least in a direction in which you are maybe unfamiliar. So the idea of repentance as kind of like a big first step, so that you are in a position where it like the most wise thing you can do is to listen and learn, because you are facing an unfamiliar track forward. So I think that I don't think I've heard repentance a lot in this conversation, not this conversation, but in the global conversation. And I think that's a really unique and important way to think about first step kind of stuff, especially in like in a changing, like you're saying, ramifications, ripples that go out and cause like actual change amongst at least the communities that we're in. I think that's I like that. Like that word, that kind of stuck.
Cool. Yeah. And I like what you said too about like, hey, this isn't the time to start an organization. There are already people leading us.
Yeah.
I mean, that is like, Faith, that's so well put. We don't believe that little steps matter. And we're like, now's the time I'm going to start a nonprofit. And you're like, no, there's already people doing it. You need to put yourself in a position to be led.
Yeah, I think sometimes white people just get really excited and are like, you know what? We're going to fix this today. And it's like, we're like, yeah, this has been 400 years. We've been trying to fix this. Yeah. I'm glad that you're excited, but you could take your excitement and your dollars and help raise money for the organizations and the people doing this work that have been doing this work that haven't gotten the visibility, and leverage your influence. And I think that I think that's something that white people can do more of, is like, look at your community and your circle. Can you leverage your influence to open up the door for a person of color or a Black person who might not have gotten in otherwise? That's great. You got a speaking engagement. They asked you a question about race. Leverage your influence. Let a Black person speak about it and talk about their perspective. I think those are more things that people should be actively doing, because there's voices who have been speaking and leading in it, and sometimes just they have not had the opportunity to get invited to those spaces. And so use your influence and help other people who have a message worth being heard get the opportunity.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I love that you said that. I love that you said sometimes white people get excited. It's like, it's so true. It's so true.
Yeah,
we're in such a hashtag culture too. Like I'll talk with my students and they'll talk about, and they're all 18, 19, 20, and they'll talk about going to protests and how much of it is just a hashtag culture, right? Just being at something where you can take a selfie, throw it on social media, throw the hashtag on there, and then it's like, I participated.
Right.
But now we're like in an election year. So yesterday was Kentucky, right? And Jefferson County shuts all their polling stations down to one station for, is it 600,000 people? I don't know off the top of my head, but that kind of stuff, like Stacey Abrams being so directly involved with trying to just make it possible for folks to vote in all the different states, and kind of just trying to open up more space for people to be able to even have a voice, or not have a voice, but to use their voice. Sorry. I'm rolling through things as you guys are talking and thinking about, there are, ways that we can be supportive, I guess is the.
Yeah, I think that's really good. So when someone, give us a teaser kind of, if somebody goes to Be the Bridge and downloads the guide, what is sort of the first, what's the door in? That's the first step.
So if somebody downloads the guide, it'll kind of give them some steps on how to facilitate your group and how to have the conversation. And then really the guide is, it's just that. It's a guide to help lead you through a conversation with your friends, and to help walk you through literally having heart-to-heart conversations, you being open and vulnerable, sharing your experiences with others. It's really a guide that's to be walked through with other people of color and white people. You're going to have it. You can have a discussion with all white people, but it's really not going to be the fullness of what it's supposed to be, because there has to be an exchange of stories and experiences. And so typically, when I've led groups, I want our groups to actually build relationships and friendships. So we would meet once a month. Some people meet weekly. It's 9 sessions. But because we met once a month meant that it was almost a year of us walking together through talking about race and living life together and doing other things besides just meeting in our group. I liked for us to go out to eat together, or for us to get to just know each other in a deeper way, so that way we understood each other's lives. And I really encourage personal conversation even before we jump into the actual guide itself and talking about maybe we were talking about lament, or maybe we were talking about some other aspects from the guide. But I loved to just say, hey, what's going on in your personal life? Like, how are you doing? And that helped all of us to understand one another a little bit better. And it humanizes people, right? I mean, if you don't know a person of a different ethnicity or background, all of us, like, you get societal, biases and stereotypes of how you think a person is. And it's not until you're able to really understand and get to know somebody that is different from you that they become more of a human to you. Like, they're humanized. They're not just a character on TV. They're not just, the music you listen to is real people. And so through that, we start having conversations where then I can ask a question in the group. One of our questions was like, what's an incident of racism you've experienced? People open up, they start to share. And, the people of color in our group, we had some Black people that were sharing their experiences. And now it's real to you because you're hearing a firsthand account of what somebody has walked through and processed through. And then for the white people, one of the questions is, what are some racist ideologies you've grown up with that you might not have recognized that you realize now? And so then it's for the white people to also come and give an exchange. And so that's what the groups are. It's like we're going to exchange back and forth our experiences. And there's no reason to let shame, as a white person, hold you back from saying, hey, you know what, I think my dad was a racist or had racist tendencies, and that breaks my heart, but that's what I learned. And a lot of people would maybe be ashamed to say that, but it's like, if I'm going to be vulnerable enough to tell you about the racist incidents I've experienced, I'm going to hold enough space to listen to what you're saying, so then we can move forward in a conversation and talk about why this is wrong and the ways that we can really walk forward together. But we have to deal with this with understanding what is going on and deal with the confession piece, and then move into that, repentance portion. And so the groups kind of walk you through, 9 steps that's going to get you there.
That's cool. That sounds an awful lot like the good news of just confession and repentance and like you said, doing that inner work. What do you tell people when they say, I want to start a group, I only know white people?
I tell people that you need to, you can do like the BTB 101 guide and as a group with people, and or start a book club with Latasha Morrison's book. The other thing I also say is you need to wait until you've built relationships with other people of color or know other people of color willing to join. I don't recommend just trying to find random people of color around the city, or, stopping people at the grocery store and being like, I am ashamed, I've been racist, can you please talk to me? Don't do that. But definitely build relationships with people, and that takes time. And so and I think that sometimes, in the eagerness that I've seen from white people, sometimes there's like an impatience, right? Like I'm so eager. True. I realize it now, and I want to do something about it. I want to have these conversations. Show me where the Black people are so I can just say I'm sorry and try to be friends. But it doesn't work like that. Like there are people who have been trying to communicate, who've been trying to share their stories, who've dealt with so much discrimination, and you have to earn someone's trust, and that takes time. So you can't force conversations on people. People who want to have conversations will. And some people aren't ready. And that's okay, because there's a lot going on, and people processing trauma, especially trauma in church, and people who maybe they've grown up in church with or been in church with for years and years. And now people are starting to care, and they've been asking people to care for a while. So some people are burnt out, and that's honest too. So, if people are ready to talk, they'll talk. And I think that, you have to just be patient enough to wait. So one lady waited like a year or a year and a half until she had actually fostered real relationships in her personal life with other people of color. Then she started a group, which is huge. And I think that people have to have that level of patience. She did her own work. She had other conversations with other white people. She was putting herself in a position to learn. But when it came to really starting her group, and we suggest that you have a co-leader that's a person of color and don't just lead with 2 white people. And so she waited until she could get that. It took her a while, but she did it. And I highly recommend that other people do the same.
Well, that's an amazing, I think that's an amazing point, because along with the sort of excitement and impatient sort of thing, I think church culture is some of it is designed to help white people deal with their guilt. You know what I mean? And not truly reconcile, but it's like, I go to a missions trip, so it's okay that I'm wealthy. I have some black friends, so it's okay that I'm white and privileged, right? I don't know, and I see obviously this in me, and I see it kind of in our churches. And so when I hear a story like the one you just told of someone who deeply wanted this experience not to be that, this wasn't about her or him and their guilt. This was really about walking and understanding. That's inspiring to me, because I think it's so easy, at least for me, to get caught up in these virtue signaling moments that help me feel better about me, but that aren't really doing the lasting work. And I think that's a really compelling picture for me. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I want to say I have so much respect for you, Faith, and I've been friends with you, but followed your work for a while. And like when you said, some people are tired and some people have experienced trauma. If I can ask you the personal question of, you have been talking about racism for as long as I've known you, and you've experienced it your whole life, and you've been saying things for a long time. What does it feel like that on some level the world's woken up a little bit? I'm trying to, I don't even want to guess what it would feel like, but I'm sure it's a mixture of things. Because like when you said, like, some people are wanting to lead still, and some people are traumatized, and some people, I mean, there has to be this feeling of, gosh, like you said, tired. Like, I've been saying this for a long time, you know what I mean? Feeling unheard. But I don't know, what has it been like?
That's a good question.
It has been encouraging in some ways to see that more people are deciding to care. It's kind of like, okay, wow, like people are, making the like conscientious decision to now want to have this conversation, which is great. And then in other ways, it's felt exhausting, because then you're also dealing with that level of like eagerness of like, I'm gonna get started, I'm ready. I've started like 15 Facebook groups, and we're having and it's just like, wait. Like, so it feels, you're encouraged because, people are energized, and they're more ready than before, which is great. And I think that's the part that makes me excited, that more people are ready to listen. But then at the same time, it's like, you also want to encourage people to truly listen to the voices that have been doing this work. And I think as a Black woman, the one thing I've been kind of saying the most lately is, in thinking about Black women and Black women leading in this work, about how so many Black women have been forgotten. And, Black women were the architects for the civil rights movement. A lot of people don't know the Black women, who were a part of that, or who were leading in that, and so many other aspects of the movement. So it makes me think, we have been talking about this, and we have been saying this, and when will also Black women be given their due credit for their leadership in this work? And are people willing to follow the leadership of Black women? And so I think that that's something that I have been pondering on, but also just talking about more lately, because I see that it's an issue. We're still dealing with patriarchy. We're still dealing with men who are like, okay, this is great. Maybe this is a problem. Let's call on so-and-so, that's another male, but kind of like, but let's not ask a woman what her thoughts are, even though she might have been leading or set up a whole organization, or, has all of this credibility. But people aren't deferring to women. And so I think for me, I'm just very invested in the liberation of Black people. And yes, it can get tiring, but I also feel like it is my, like a calling in my life and a part of my life's work. And so I have a grace for it that maybe some don't. And that's just because it's just God given, and therefore there's an endurance for it. But I also have had to learn how to just shut it off or turn my phone off, quite literally, and just take a mental and personal break so I can be fresh to have these conversations. And I also don't conjure up words. Like if I'm writing something or I'm saying something about race or I'm making a post about it, it's because I have the words in the moment to talk to it and to speak to it. But if I don't, I'm not going to say anything. And I think that that's kept me real and authentic to just who I am and what I'm thinking about in that moment and what I feel needs to be said into the world. And it just doesn't feel forced that way for me.
Yeah. Gosh, I love that what you just said about calling out the importance of Black women and their voices. We talked about it last week, but I do some work with the divine feminine. And the reason why I like it so much is because there's this picture both in scripture, but also we just see it in the world about the feminine presence around things really does represent and embody exactly what you're talking about, sort of this reconciliation, this healing, this taking care of. And have you seen that to be true? Because it feels exactly what you're saying. When a woman is leading, it does feel this very sort of like, come around and we're going to walk through this together. It's a very different way towards reconciliation and rebuilding than maybe more of a masculine sense of sort of a checklist.
Right. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of power in the leadership of women, and we just have a way. We have a way of communicating and saying things and leading that in some ways I think can be more inviting. But not only that, we're just really brilliant and we can multitask, and we have so many ways of how we can approach situations. And so I think that is something that is so special. And it's not that you don't want to work with men or that men don't have anything to offer. It's not that. The world knows how they feel about men, right? Like, but it is saying that it's easier to know that a man is going to get credit for work that he's done, even if behind the scenes it's a woman that made it happen, than for a woman to get credit for something that she's done. And I think, especially in this work, we have to ask ourselves, why? Or if we're thinking of, hey, I want somebody to talk about race, or I want to, have somebody come speak. Why is it oftentimes that the man is the first person that somebody thinks about? Why isn't it that women aren't thought of too, that are doing the same work and also might be even more qualified to speak into it?
Yeah. Gosh, well, I'm so thankful you've taken the time to be with us and point people where they can find you and your work, and then also be the bridge.
So you can find me at faithbrooks.com.
2 T's, yeah?
2 T's.
Okay.
2 T's in my name. My parents just wanted me to be unique. There's no fancy story behind it. But I think I'm the only Faith with 2 T's in the world. So I think it's actually kind of cool. I liked it when I was little.
I love it.
And now it's great. My mom, I was like, she had a mission behind it, and it worked.
That's awesome.
And then the social media, faithwith2tsb@gmail.com, and I'm on all platforms there. And you can learn more about Be the Bridge at bethebridge.com or be a bridge builder on social media.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Faith. Tim and Mike, do you guys have anything else you wanted to say?
Nope.
That was so good. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yes, Faith, you're the best. Seriously, really appreciate you and all your work, and I'm really grateful for your friendship too.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so nice to meet you all, and thanks for having me.
You too.
Great to meet you, Faith.
Bye.